Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where we take a deep dive into a particular film. And we're in the heart of 2024 as we get to the middle of the year, and we are now post World War II John Ford filmmaking, but that doesn't stop him from making a World War II movie that came out the year that it ended. So, and we'll be talking about that. They were expendable. But joining me for this episode is my frequent collaborator and friend, Foster Harlfinger. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. And we have done quite a few John Ford films together
Mhm.
on this wonderful journey. It'll be interesting when it's not John Ford anymore in 7 months. But
I know this is, I can tell you've been doing it a long time. This is the fifth John Ford movie I've done, and I feel like I only do one every couple months. So it's been going
I
on well.
I started this John Ford journey last June.
Mhm. Oh my gosh. Are you sick of them yet? A little bit.
It'll be interesting because I'll be getting into some of his bigger films, and
Yeah.
not gonna lie, there's a decent amount of his bigger films that I haven't seen yet. So like I know we're doing My Darling Clementine next week. I haven't seen that one, so
Yeah.
that one I'm interested in. This one I think is one of his more well-known war films, and I hadn't seen this one either. But we're in the heart of my director's tournament, trying to figure out who's going to come in the future in 2025 after we take a Wes Anderson break to start next year, which will be very refreshing and very different. But for those who haven't tuned into this show before, we have three segments. We have coming attractions, which we'll be looking at the films coming out Friday, May 31st. Hopefully, well, no, there's not really hope as we're going to talk about the movies coming out. This has been a sad month for the box office,
Mhm.
to be perfectly honest. And I don't think this particular weekend we're going to be talking about is going to save it. But and then we get into our feature film, and then we always have some recommendations for you. Now, talking about this opening weekend, there are three wide releases coming out this weekend, and not gonna lie, none of them seem particularly uh what would grab my attention at least. We have Ezra, which is this, father-son film that's going to be coming out. We have Summer Camp, which is about some older actresses coming together for a summer camp weekend, and Young Woman and the Sea, which has to be the least marketed Disney movie ever. Because, like, this is coming out from Disney and has Daisy Ridley in it, but I haven't heard jack shit about this. Like, nothing.
Yeah.
So that's so weird to me. It makes me sad for this weekend. But the interesting thing is, there are other films coming out this weekend in much smaller capacity that are more interesting. But which one are you most excited for, Foster?
Yeah, I'm really excited for In a Violent Nature. I first heard about this. I want to say Sundance it released, and I saw some reviews talking about how it was a slasher movie from the point of view of the slasher. And immediately, because I love horror movies, I was like, okay, this movie is on my radar. I gotta see this. Had a pretty cool poster when the trailer came out. It was fun because I realized midway through the trailer, oh, this is the thing. This is the movie everybody was talking about, and I was really excited for it. It's an IFC movie, right? So I don't know. I just everything about it just seems like targeted towards me and what I want to see in movies. I don't know what that says about me, but I don't know. I think it looks cool.
I distinctly remember seeing this trailer dropping in a theater when I was seeing something and being like, that's interesting. I want to see it.
Hmm.
And I have seen it. I won't say anything except that it's pretty damn gory.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And it is also a very interesting watch. I would love to say that Robot Dreams is my most anticipated movie coming out this weekend, but begrudgingly and out of spite, I'm not because this movie should have come out in the US a long time ago. Absolutely ridiculous that a film that was nominated for Best Animated Feature for last year's Oscars is releasing 5/12ths of the way into the next year. So ridiculous. There's also a Jim Henson documentary coming out that on Disney Plus that I'm looking forward to. But the one that I'm most excited about is The Dead Don't Hurt, which
Hmm.
is Viggo Mortensen's new Western. It has Viggo Mortensen, Danny Houston, Garrett Dillahunt, Vicky Krieps. I'm just very excited about this. I'm a big Western fan. I love Viggo Mortensen. I find it interesting that he's directing this film. I didn't love his film that he had directed with, I think that was him and Lance Hendrickson playing father and son. Even had David Cronenberg in it playing a doctor, which I thought was hilarious. Um, but based off this trailer, I'm in. It has a good cast. I'm glad to see Vicky Krieps in some more things. Um, like your big come out role was going toe to toe with Daniel Day Lewis
Hmm.
and stepping up. I'm glad to see her in something like this. So I'm pretty excited about The Dead Don't Hurt. I'm just hoping that it's like actually out in my area if I don't get a
Oh yeah.
screening link. So we'll have to see. But that's always the fun thing is like, when will this come out? And I'm sure I'll be playing in New York at somewhere this
Yeah,
coming
I'm sure.
weekend. But yeah, so this is a very interesting weekend for some of the smaller stuff coming out, but the top end of the release is just nothing seems particularly interesting weekend, and that's not going to do well for the horrible box office trends that are going on. And I have very little faith in a new Bad Boys movie coming out the following weekend to, help the box office. So I don't know, it's going to look sad
Hmm.
for a little bit until at least Inside Out 2 comes out
Yeah.
because that will make money.
Hmm.
Um, but those are our coming attractions for May 31st, which then our feature film for this week is They Were Expendable, which this film did come out in 1945, directed by John Ford. Apparently, they were trying to convince him to direct this film all throughout the war, except he wouldn't do it until the war was wrapping up because he wanted to commit to his duties making propaganda films for the military, which I got through a bunch of them and they're interesting. They're certainly propaganda films. But some background on this is starring Robert Montgomery, John Wayne, and Don Reed. This is based on a 1942 novel based off of events that happened in around 1941, shortly after Pearl Harbor. This is focusing on the Battle of the Philippines, which was a U.S. colony at the time, and the Japanese attacking that as it's one of the closest outlets for attacking the United States at the time. This is loosely based on real people and real events, but technically it is not based on true story. It's well known for its detailed depiction of naval experiences during World War II. So a lot of Navy people actually highly praise this film for how well it represents what goes on in the Navy. Ford refused, like I mentioned, multiple times to direct this throughout the war, and he was particularly harsh on John Wayne filming this film because he didn't think it was right that John Wayne didn't serve his country during World War II. So John Wayne was abused a lot during this movie because John Ford did not take too kindly to him getting a deferment. So, which is very interesting because John Wayne became a rah rah America figure for so many decades after this, and apparently he wasn't America enough for John Ford. Oh, so interesting. Ford actually broke his leg filming this film, and Montgomery actually had to take on directing a decent amount of the film, which he has on IMDb. He's uncredited as co-directing this film because rules and all that stuff when it comes to credits. We have this film has received extensive support from the Navy while filming, and the credits specifically included military positions for those who were in the military. So, like John Ford, if you notice in the credits, actually has his rank. And this was nominated for sound and effects during the Oscars that year. But, Foster, what are your thoughts on They Were Expendable?
I thought this was a really good movie. I have to say, just you talking about that, I just wonder what it would be like to be a fly on the wall watching John Ford direct because his movies are so pristine, but like every story you hear about him is just like it's just weird. And so you're just like, of course, this is what happened on the set of his movies.
Just like negging John Wayne in between takes. It's
Yeah.
like, oh look, you did such a great job in that scene. Too bad you couldn't do it during the war. Just imagining stuff.
Um, yeah, my image of John Ford right now is always just going to be David Lynch, with the eye patch at the end of Fablemans. I'm never going to be able to think of him like any other way.
Yep.
Um, so I thought you mentioned the naval battles. I thought that stuff was incredible and like far and away the most amazing thing about the movie. I wasn't really ready for how impressive they were going to be. It was like almost Apocalypse Now, like stuff
Yeah.
falling in the water and it's splashing up and the formation of the Japanese planes in the sky. Like that was amazing and like in quotes, worth the price of admission alone, I think.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think the movie as a whole, it's not really a movie for me necessarily, but like I get that it's a very good movie. And I think the talking scenes in between the naval battles, some of them really worked for me and they're very emotional. I like the stuff with Donna Reed a lot. And I liked the like last 20 minutes I thought really hit home well. But then it's a little long. There's some moments that maybe dragged a bit for me. So that's my sum up.
Yeah, it was so specifically with the battle sequences. There's one specific shot, which is a camera shooting out the back of a ship, which also, let's be clear, this is from 1945. You couldn't fake any of this. Like there's no CGI. You can't make fake ships and stuff like these are actual ships. It's a shot of the camera shooting out the back of the ship. There's other ships behind shooting at this ship. There's planes in the air shooting down at the ship, and this ship is shooting like torpedoes out the back of it, and it's all captured in one shot. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Hmm.
The amount of detail and precision and planning that would have to go into making these scenes work is crazy. The pyrotechnics that they used, like there's one particular sequence in like the climactic battle where it ends with a giant explosion of the ship, and it's
Mm.
just like, holy crap! And
Yeah.
it just blew me away the amount of it's like obviously it's not all in camera because there's a mix of they definitely had like a rig setup where they had screen in the back with stuff on it, but there's a lot of in camera work in this film. Even at the beginning when they're doing the maneuvers, like they're capturing like this is a really well shot, and it's one of those kinds of things where it's like you always know where things are. And that's important in action, which is why things like Fury Road work versus like you not being able to tell what the hell's happening in a overly edited action sequence, which I'm not going to call out any other movies my name for bad things, but like there's a John Ford had an understanding of how action works and being able to track all of this going on, and that's thrilling, it's exciting. I was blown away by those action sequences, or even like at the very end, like you mentioned, like the last 20 minutes, there's a part where it's like they're blowing up stuff and getting the hell out of there, and like the even just the pyrotechnics of like it's not an action sequence, but you just see this explosion and you're just like makes me think of like Tropic Thunder, like Danny McBride back there, like blowing up all the pyrotechnics. All that stuff is incredible and true. That's the bread and butter of this film. It's like you watch this movie because this is a thrilling war action movie.
Yeah.
I think I felt like the Donna Reed stuff was well acted. I think it worked well in the scenes, but because how long this movie was, I didn't
Mm.
really feel like that part of the film was really necessary, to be honest. And like she wasn't in it much. And after a certain point, they just completely forgot about that up until the very end where they were like asking questions like, "Oh, what happened to her?"
Hmm.
And I just feel like this film probably could have been tighter
Yeah.
and also, leading up to like that last stretch, there's definitely moments where like this film really takes its time to build up certain moments. Like there's some really effective moments, like the literal walking up to the ship before they go to the final battle, where like Montgomery is dressed up looking like General MacArthur with
Mhm.
like his sunglasses and his pipe and the jacket and the hat and everything. But there's a bunch of sequences leading up to that point that just feel like they're so drawn out, and it's just like this could have been a little snappier because like this is what like a
Yeah.
2 hour and some odd minute film, and it's just like which John Ford didn't make a ton of those up to this point. A lot of his films were like that hour 30, hour 40 up to that point, and this definitely feels like it could have been leaner. But one of the things that really worked for me about this film is the two leads. Because you have Montgomery, you have Wayne. And I felt like it was a natural bit of tension between them. Because you can tell John Wayne's character has Rusty has things that he wants to do that he feels like are bigger than what he's stuck with. Like he wants to be on a destroyer. He
Hmm.
wants to be in the thick of it and not driving around on little patrol boats.
Hmm.
And you have Montgomery's character who they keep calling him Brink, right? Or Brick.
Hmm.
And he has a lot of honor in what he's doing. And that's interesting how there's that conflict between the two of them. And there's also a bit of a rivalry because they're each captaining their own patrol boats. And there's a lot of natural tension between these soldiers on each of these different boats because, like, well, this one keeps getting all the missions and all the glory. And there's an interesting kind of rivalry amongst the soldiers in this film. And I think that goes a decent way in building up some drama. Also, Ward Bond sighting. I'm pretty sure he's been in like 8 or 9 John Ford movies up to this point. I did enjoy him in this film. And I think what this film does is it really honors those who fought on those patrol boats, those PT boats, because after Pearl Harbor, they were it. Like we didn't have our whole brunt of our naval forces there to actually fight in the Pacific. A lot of our ships were stuck in San Diego. And you have those big moments where like the admiral comes in and talks to Montgomery's character and he's just like, this is the sacrifice. Like you have to be able to hold the line.
Hmm.
And that's why they're expendable. It's just like, you're probably gonna die. But like we need you to do this and do
Hmm.
your best. And I think this film respects like I'm not surprised that like this film goes to great lengths to respect those soldiers because like it's John Ford. Obviously he had a lot of respect for our military. But this is certainly like unless it's somebody going out to have a very specific message about it, I don't think you get a whole lot of films like this anymore. I think like society today is much more going to be questioning things and focusing on other aspects of war. But like this, I feel like is a really respectful look at the soldiers that put their lives on the line in the name of duty and supporting their country.
Yeah. I will say it does feel like a little pessimistic of a view of war. It's not
Yeah.
like a rah rah like let's get them type of movie. I mean, even the title of the movie alone, you know. Um, I think quickly going back to the Donna Reed thing, I rewatched one scene, which is when John Wayne goes into this bar and then there's this sad music playing and then the
Mhm.
guys come up to the bar and get their drinks, blah blah blah. I didn't realize this, maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention the first time, but just from like reading about it, the song that's used in that bar scene is the same song, I guess, that's used to introduce Donna Reed's character. And so when he's like in the bar, it's like he's like sort of reminiscing about her, but also like the life you could have by not being in war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and that's the thing. There are like the moments where, and I felt like these scenes were really well shot too, with the lighting and the
Hmm.
music, with the scenes between the Admiral and Brickley. That this is a somber, like this is not like oh, go out there and kick some tail, boys. No, it's like
Yeah.
this is not a great situation we're in. We really need to like, and it wasn't like 20 minutes before in the movie where they're like they had the whole entire demonstration of what the P boats could do, and they're just like, you have great maneuvering, you're riding a tight ship. They just lack substance
Hmm.
because it's like a PT boat is just like a boat with guns on it.
Hmm.
Like this isn't like an armored destroyer or like an aircraft carrier. Like these are like vulnerable boats that these men are on trying to fight. And like them having those moments where it's just like,
Yeah.
you're it. And it's just like, well, thanks. And you feel that somberness, you feel that weight. And that's the thing, true. This is not like a pro-war film. This is people are gonna die. And this is gonna be a horrible thing. And the best that you can do is rise up and try to support each other and fight for your country.
Hmm.
And that's what a lot of them have going into this. Love the dynamic between all these characters though. I think that this really feels like this is a group of men that have been doing this on these boats together. There's a real chemistry, and even if a lot of the characters don't have a lot of characterization, some of them do. Some of them are some like good character actor work. But, like they all feel like they come together. And you have those moments where it's just like Ward Bond's character messed up and they all went to the bar and left the boat out there and the water went out and it got stuck on the rocks and messed up one of the boats. And it's just like you have those kinds of moments that are very human. It's like they mess up
Hmm.
and it puts them in a bad spot. And this film could have been tighter, but I feel like it really does tell a strong story in terms of these soldiers, the lengths that they're going to go to do their duty. And especially by the end, just how it was just like, it's such a shit deal by the end, where it's like, sure, Montgomery and John Wayne's characters, Rusty and Brickley, they're going to get sent off for bigger and better things. It's like, but what about the men? And it's just like, can't worry about them. And it
Hmm.
just flames, everything's burning, and they're just left out there to try to figure things out.
Hmm.
And I was really surprised because like especially for a film coming out of World War II that I would have expected to be like super like, yeah, this is this kind of real. And
Hmm.
I appreciate that about this film. So this one definitely stood out to me amongst all the different John Ford movies that I've watched up to this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for the time especially it is like sort of refreshingly not like glossed over. It's like these are the sort of people that you might not consider when you just read the headlines and you just have a vague understanding of what's going on. But like on the ground level, there are a lot of like people who are just sort of trying to do their job.
Mhm.
I think towards the end, was this the moment you were mentioning when they were gonna like be sent to Australia and they were asking like what about the other guys? That's the scene you
Yeah,
were talking about. Yeah. And they're like, well, there's no room for them. That I think hits it home to the idea that like to the higher ups, you're kind of just a number. Like, are you more useful over here or over here? Like, where can we put
yeah,
you? So it's like you're not really a person. And then right as I had that thought, one of the guys comes up to ask if his name was like on the list to go on the plane. And he said, "Is my name on the list?" And the guy says, "You're number 31." He asks, "Is my name there?" And the other guy gives him a number. Like just really hits it home, I think. And also I mean, throughout the movie, they're like, no, 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 the music
yeah.
that plays, like, it doesn't feel like as patriotic as it would ordinarily. It feels like really somber. It reminded me of the end of Full Metal Jacket, the like Mickey Mouse song that they sing. Um, so that was just one other connection that I made watching the movie.
Yeah, obviously that one's a lot more like punch in the face, kind of ironic
Yeah.
because it's Kubrick. But
Hmm.
like the Saints come marching home, that just feels a little different
Hmm.
by the end of this film than maybe the first time we heard it at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And like there's just a lot of things that really worked about this film for me because like I've watched 50 John
Yes.
Ford films up to this point. which I'm processing that. And this is 3 or 4, honestly, for me, because
Mm.
like great expectations. What the hell am I saying? The Grapes of Wrath and Stagecoach, like up here, and the Four Sons. Which did we do that one
We did
together?
do that
Yeah,
together. That one was really good.
yeah. These two are like the next down for me, to be honest. And they're both about war, and they're about some different kinds of things related to war. Obviously, that one was about this family torn apart by war, and this one is about, I'm going to sound cliche here, but a band of brothers that are thrown into the thick of it, and it's just like, hey, this might not work out well for you. And let's not forget the, which this sounds silly to think about now, the reason that the Expendables franchise is called that is because of war films like this.
Hmm.
Obviously, silly now because that franchise has completely jumped the shark. But like that comes from the Rambo movies, where it's like Rambo is expendable. All of them are expendable. And this film, it's like they were expendable. They were thrown out there and just hoping that they could possibly hold the line. And the fact that they didn't, and like that scene where they hear the news of like John Wayne's in that bar scene just works on so many levels because it's like one, on a more pessimistic look of like, hey, they were trying to get out of there, like the native Filipinos, and he just comes in and just like, I need a drink, and then they have to do whatever the American soldier wants and go back into the bar and open it back up for him. But then they show the news of like the Battle of Bataan and didn't go so great.
Hmm.
And obviously, it's like the Japanese took us by surprise by the beginning and did a lot of damage. And this story takes place before like we were full blown fighting in the Pacific. So like this was the very early moments of us being involved in World War II. And it definitely has that like there's been a hopelessness at it. Like obviously this, and it's very interesting that this gets released in 1945 because it's like you know what, I didn't double check when the release date was for this. So like I don't know if this is pre or post, the bombs dropping.
Hmm.
This is very interesting if this was like post the war ending and then just having this like very pessimistic look at like, hey, things weren't going great.
Hmm.
And then we just had this humongous victory where, obviously we went to some very great and drastic lengths to end that war very permanently.
Hmm.
Um, but this one's definitely one of the stronger films that I've seen of John Ford so far.
Yeah, the movie was released, I was just Googling as you were talking, December 20th of 1945.
Well, this is certainly after the war was over
Yeah.
then.
I think they started filming maybe a little bit before it ended. But yeah, I don't know how soon they started filming it.
It's so crazy because like a big studio film like this could be shot, finished, and thrown together
Yeah,
and released in a couple
I
months.
know.
It's not how things work today.
Yeah.
But I guess, Foster, do you have any other thoughts about They Were Expendable?
Just a couple quick things. I mean, you mentioned way earlier on that it's like he's like a surprisingly great action director, and then that just makes me think of Stagecoach with like the Apache like
Yep.
not on chariots. What are they on? They're like on horse
Mhm.
things.
And
Um,
he's on like the horses at the front of the carriage and
yeah, yeah, the
everything.
carriages. That's what I'm thinking of.
Or well,
Uh,
stagecoach.
the Stagecoach. Oh, it. I've only been up a couple hours. Leave me alone. So I think he's like we think of him as like a great Western director. He's a really good action director too, which is kind
Yep.
of funny to think about, but he really, really is. And then the other thing that just struck me in pretty much all the movies that I've watched for this show for John Ford, there have always been moments of humor that really take me by surprise because you don't expect them to be funny. And this was the one I wrote down when the guy comes back and takes a big ladle full of liquid, and he says, "Holy smokes, cook! You call that soup?" And he says, "No, sir, that's dishwater." It's just like. John Ford just like tosses these little zingers in the middle. It's just so random. It makes me laugh.
Yeah, there was a couple of the character actors that had some fun moments like that,
Yeah.
and he was one of them in particular. Or like all of them trying to take, and I know it wasn't a funny moment when that ship was run aground and like they left it there because they wanted to go get alcohol. And all of them like bickering back and forth trying to take blame for it
Hmm.
was it's like those were like the fun character moments between them because it's like it's basically a train of them who keeps trying to take the blame from each
Hmm.
other, and including like Ward Bond by the end, his character was the one that um was really taking like, hey, this is on me. uh, and then I think the stinger on that was like, well, I hope you enjoyed your beer. They didn't have any. Which is just like throwing that in there right at the end of
Yeah.
that scene, so I definitely get that too.
Yep. That's it for me. That was all I have.
So this one is a definitely recommend for me from all these John Ford films that I've seen, and I'm looking forward to this like prime section of his career post World War II, probably through which is September, when The Searchers comes out, which I'll certainly be looking forward to that. But we have recommendations for you. And Foster, what weird shit are you going to recommend to everybody? Because I know what you're recommending, and it sure is.
Yeah, I'm gonna recommend I saw the TV Glow. This is directed by James Schoenbrunn, who just a couple years ago did We're All Going to the World's Fair. Did you see that movie?
I got a press screening link for that when it dropped in festivals over a year before it got released. And it's still one of the most viewed reviews that I have on my YouTube channel.
What did you think of that movie?
I still don't know what the movie
Yeah,
is.
I didn't get it. I'm gonna be just like completely honest, and I felt like a real idiot when I watched that movie. Like still don't completely get it. And so when I saw TV Glow, I was like very happy to like actually feel like I have a handle on it. I felt like I got what it was saying and I connected to it in my own way. And I think the filmmaking is like a huge level up. It's a beautiful looking movie. It's like really like uh aesthetically pleasing. It's moody. It is very like David Lynch, David Cronenberg. There's a lot of influences there clearly, like in the visual style. The tone is just really, really distinct. It's like I really get excited whenever I see a movie that just has a feeling that I've never felt before, and this is that. And I'm like, oh man, this is like a director to watch, pretty much, you know? Like it doesn't happen that often. But it's pretty exciting. And I think the 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 premise is there's this guy, Justice Smith, who is really obsessed with this TV show, The Pink Opaque is what it's called. And it's like this kind of corny kids show that he watches and like has a really deep connection with. And it's about his connection to that show, and then he gets a little bit older and how he views that show now in retrospect. And it's like deeper than just the show, but I think it definitely resonates with me as someone who grew up loving movies, and movies meant so much to me growing up. And um I just feel like the movie is very deep and there's a lot to unpack there, and I've had a lot of fun thinking about it. And so the reason I'm recommending it is because it's had a lot of staying power with me. I saw it like a couple weeks ago. I still think about it almost every day. It's really like it's a unique movie.
Yeah, it's I I hate rating things, to be honest. I Which is why I don't rate things on my YouTube channel. I have people comment, it's like, what rating would you give? I'm like, that's not important. But We're All Going to the World's Fair is one of those kinds of movies that I just gave like a 2.5 because I'm like, there was something working here, and I'm still working through it. And years later, still working through it. I gave this like a 5 out of 5 because there's something working here, and it had me working and really thinking and connecting and building thoughts and ideas and connections. And it's so wholly unique. And in ways that, like, it's very interesting that you said it's something like you've never seen before, and also knowing that you didn't live in the 90s. And me growing up in the 90s, there were certain things about this that like hit in a specific way because this is so very influenced by the 90s and like 90s television and stuff like that. And oddly, this kind of reminded me of Grigsby Bear, like
Mm.
the show itself in this like weird, strange kind of way it looks. But this film is so atmospheric and thought provoking. It's like it has strange body horror elements in a Cronenberg kind of way. Very specifically towards the end, there was a moment where I'm just like, yep, this is a Cronenberg movie. And it's the music. The music got me. And Claw Machine, I specifically brought this up so that I got it right by Sloppy Jane and Phoebe Bridgers
Mm.
was such an interesting and it's performed live in the movie
Is this
in
the
a bar.
streaming one?
No, it's the one right before it.
Oh, okay. Yep, yep, yep. Oh, yes, yes. No, I
Where
remember now. Sorry.
where the song literally says I saw the TV glow.
Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
That hit me on such a level. Justice Smith has been very hit or miss for me. I thought that he did really well here, but I'm a huge Bridget Lundy Payne fan from like Atypical. And I also listened to the A24 podcast interview between Jane Schoenbrunn and Bridget Lundy Payne.
Mm,
It was fascinating.
yeah.
And it's very interesting because there's so many reads to this film. And I know immediately I'm like, this is a trans allegory.
Yeah.
And which makes a lot of sense because of Jane Schoenbrunn.
Hmm.
Um, and there's just moments where this film makes you think, like it challenges you to think what's real or not. And there's reasonable ways to read this film in either direction. And it's such a fascinating experience. Obviously, I would not recommend this to everybody because there's a lot of people who would not want
Yeah.
to watch this movie. But like if you love film, you should really watch this movie.
Yeah.
Um, very different film, but also similar recommendation because I don't think everybody will love this because I am going to quote a middle-aged man who said this on the way out of the theater that I was walking behind. You know, I was going in expecting this movie to be slow, but it was so slow. Like you expected it to be like slow, but it was so slow. And he's saying this to his wife as I'm walking out behind them in the parking lot. It's evil does not exist because
Oh, yeah.
I finally got to watch this. I know you and Rowan saw this at the New York
Yeah.
Film Festival, right?
Yes.
This really blew me away. I will
Yeah.
say it is very slow. Like when the
Yeah.
opening credits are set to a camera just scrolling past trees for like 6 minutes at the
Yeah,
beginning
yeah.
of the movie. But I thought this was a really intriguing and fascinating and mysterious way of handling the specific themes of like humanity and nature and what we're doing to it. And this is from the filmmaker that made Drive My Car. So like I expected this to be methodical. But the nice thing was it was almost half the runtime. It's
Hmm.
Drive My Car. But like I would definitely recommend this to anybody who really loves film because like this is not something I would recommend to like my mom or my brother who like watch movies because they like watching movies, like certain movies. But if you're like a big fan of film, I think this is definitely a film that you should watch. And it has great themes, it has great ideas that it's processing through, and it's also gorgeous. Like this is also a gorgeous film.
Yeah, I think the music is pre-existing music, and I think Hamaguchi just really liked the music so much that he made this movie and set it to the music, which is
Uh,
interesting, which makes then more sense like why it has such a like impact when you watch the movie, like the shots of the trees, just so you can hear the music, really.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I love the middle scene. It's like the town hall type of scene when the people who want to do the glamping stuff, which by the way, have you ever heard the word glamping said more times in your life? Or
no.
read it on the subtitles, I suppose. But yeah, that middle segment is like my favorite part of the movie. I also think about this one a lot. This one's growing more the more distance I have from it in my mind.
Yeah, because I just that was one of my favorite episodes of Runtime Babe was when you all talked about your thoughts from the New York Film Festival. I'm like,
Mhm.
I really look forward to checking out this movie
Thank you.
eventually.
Yeah, I forgot I
And
even did that.
eventually it arrived. It's
Yes.
okay, Foster. Pepperidge Farm remembers. Um one film that I rewatched, which this is odd that I'm saying this is one of my films because I do own this on DVD on Criterion is Beasts of No Nation. I rewatched
Okay.
this week. This was the film that put Netflix on the map and was like, "Hey, we can make cinema." Idris Elba's so good in this, and this is such an impactful film. Very much in the same vein of like City of God, in the way that like violence can warp young men
Mhm.
into a world that is so dangerous and so toxic. And this is such a fascinating look at like child soldiers and stuff like that. It still hits. And, you know, because it's Kerry Fukunawa, right, that directed this, who's made some really interesting things between like True Detective season one and No Time to Die. And this definitely was the film that like really captured attention and really changed the game for film in general because this really was the film that like Netflix was like, hey, we're players in this game. And they eat up a lot of big films, and it wouldn't surprise me if more of them go to streaming with how the box office is doing right now. If you couldn't tell, I'm very upset about how the box office is doing right now. It makes me very sad.
Yeah.
Um, and one film off of my watch list that I watched that I wanted to highlight here that will be an episode on Rowan in the Wasteland is Kwaidan from director Masaki Kobayashi, who made me very happy that he absolutely decimated Zack Snyder in my director's tournament. Just, because I'm a huge fan of Harakiri, and I really look forward to watching the Human Condition trilogy of films that he made. But this is a 3 hour Japanese horror anthology where it's taking folklore stories, including the Snow Maiden one, which was like the coolest one. Love that from this. This is such a gorgeous, fascinating film, and Kobayashi's direction of this is just chef's kiss. This is such a visually stunning film from start to finish, and it makes me want to watch every single one of his films. And it certainly takes its time at moments because, like, this is a 3 hour and 4 minute film telling four anthology stories. So, like, obviously they all take their time, but like, it's fascinating, it's creepy, it's eerie, it's unnerving, and it really is just a beautiful love letter to Japanese folklore too. So, highly recommend. It's on Max because, of course, it is.
Nice. Who recommended this one? You or Rowan?
This was Rowan.
Mm.
But this was also apparently on my watch list twice. I had to delete both of them when I took it off. I'm like, now I have to audit my watch list to see if I have a bunch of doubles of things. I'm like, God damn it. Oh well, it happens. Except it's in Excel, so I could easily do that because
Mm.
sorting. But anyway, but Foster, thank you so much for coming on for another episode of Welcome to the Wasteland, John Ford edition.
Yes, thank you for having me. See you for my darling Clementine.
Yes, Foster will be on the next episode with our friend Jake, so you won't have to wait long to have Foster back in the saddle again. And I can guarantee you right now, the new Bad Boys movie will not be my number one movie to watch next weekend. But thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.